Hey everyone, it's David with Streaming Relativity, home of the Astro-D.N.A. Observatory. And earlier today I did my very first community post on YouTube, and I just wanted everybody to know that the clear sky chart for the observatory looks really promising tonight. And I double-checked that against the hourly forecast, and I think we're going to have a clearing. It should open up probably around 9 or 10 o'clock this evening and run into, well into like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I've got my fingers crossed that that means we're going to be able to get this mosaic, at least the first run of the sequence of this mosaic of the Castor's left foot, Castor's heel, that area there within Gemini. And I'm going to be using my Astrotech 115 EDT refractor in combination with the ASI 2600 mm Pro camera to do a 9-panel mosaic of this area in Gemini, and I think this is going to be really gorgeous. We're going to be able to squeeze in M35, a very rich open cluster in Gemini, as well as some of the smaller clusters, star clusters around M35. And we're going to also be able to get the IC443, which is the Jellyfish Nebula, which is a supernova remnant, and a bunch of surrounding nebula that I think is going to really look gorgeous, especially in comparison to the open cluster. So I think we've got a very nice composition here that we've taken a lot of time to plan out, and we've built an N.I.N.A sequence to run to produce these panels. And oh, by the way, that planning session was the subject of a video I just recently posted. And if you haven't already seen that video, you might want to take some time to just go through how this was all planned out. I think that's an interesting video, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And when you're down there, you might as well subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get notifications every time I put a video out, which seems to be once or twice a week. And for all those who have already subscribed and are providing really cool feedback and creating a community here, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It actually helps keep me going and producing these videos. So with that, we're going to jump into this imaging session, and I'm going to start by actually breaking down the clear sky chart as well as the forecast. I'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, I'm sure we all have our routines for checking when it's safe to observe, and one of the things that I like to do is I use a website called cleardarksky.com, which has an entry for the Astro-D.N.A. Observatory. And I do a little bit of sponsoring of this site. It's really not a lot of money. It's actually quite modest level of support for what I think to be a tremendous amount of value that is delivered. But if we get a little closer in on this and take a look at the chart itself, you're going to see that this is going to tell me for any given day and hourly time slot what the cloud cover is likely going to be. And there's two models here. There's the standard, the US model, I believe, and then the European cloud cover model. And it looks to me like around 10 and 11 this evening, we have some clarity here in terms of clouds. Now, transparency isn't perfect. It's actually below average transparency, and I think that's attributable to the fact that there's a lot of humidity in the air tonight, and I certainly hope it doesn't snow because the temperatures are dropping to levels that we could see a little bit of dusting tonight. So seeing is about average, a 3 out of 5 on their rating scale. And of course, listen, we still have some, we'll have some moonshine. It's relatively low in altitude during this period. It's probably around 5 degrees above celestial equator. So, but either way, that's okay, because remember, we're doing a basic composition here. We're just going to test the panels. We just want to collect an hour or two worth of data so that we can stack and see whether or not we have a good composition here. with that, I think we can go out there and let's open up the dome and get the equipment ready to go and acclimated to the temps. Yeah, it's definitely hard not to love drone footage, but we have more important things to do right now, which is let's go over the game plan for the evening. So here's Stellarium, and uh, I'm basically just showing where Gemini is located in this map, and I'm going to make sure that everybody's clear relative to some very important aspects of a sky chart or a planetarium software. The first thing is that, when you're looking at one of these charts, there's a north-south line, and you might think that you're pointing north right now. You're actually not. We're actually facing south here, and that explains why east is to the left and west is to the right. Anyway, the north-south line we call the meridian, and the meridian, of course, when you look directly above your head, you'll see something called the zenith, and it just so happens that what we're trying to image here is south of the zenith, and at around I'd say something in the neighborhood of 9:30 or so. The vast majority of our target will be passing over across the meridian. Okay. Also, you'll notice that I have a box here that fairly well represents the framing that our mosaic will have, and I did that through settings in Stellarium. Stellarium has an area where a settings area where you can go to markings and then check off rectangular field of view, and I put 5.5 degrees by 3.6 degrees. That's roughly in the neighborhood of what our mosaic will look like. And that allows us to see a box on screen that is going to be roughly the size of our mosaic. And with that, hopefully everybody is clear that the Earth is rotating, and because of that, it appears that these celestial objects in the sky seem to be rotating, but they're actually not. Now they are moving. We'll talk about that in another video, but we are moving relative to those objects. Those objects are very far away. And they appear to move to the west. And so we have a certain amount of time from the point that it crosses the meridian until it reaches its setting in the western horizon, and that we have roughly, let's call it 6 hours. We're only going to image for about an hour and a half, perhaps 2, and that is going to be from 10 p.m. until midnight. So we should be okay, and looks like we can go right into N.I.N.A. Okay, with a set game plan, basically it was just a matter of connecting to the observatory computer and making sure that all systems are a go for the evening. Make sure all the connections are correct, the camera temperature is set, focuser is operational, filter wheels, etc. So just want to make sure that the dome is controllable, telescope is controllable, and that everything is reporting A-OK, including PhD2. So things look pretty good, and now that leaves walking through the actual sequence itself. And just a reminder for everybody, here's the framing we're going for. It's a 9-panel mosaic of Castor's heel, left foot, and I have mentioned M35 is an open cluster which will occupy the upper right panel. And largely what I'm going though for is this beautiful nebulosity here from the supernova remnant, the Jellyfish Nebula. This actually resolves into very complex nebula and very fine detail in here. There are some open clusters near it, and there are some prominent stars in Gemini. So I think this is going to be I hope it to be a very cool composition. And tonight's goal is to capture each of these panels. So so this is the exact pointing that we want, and each panel, the RA and deck, the coordinates for each panel have been calculated by N.I.N.A automatically based on number of panels I want, and I've sent that to my sequencer, and I've saved this sequence out locally. So there's 9 panels. Now I had centered on Propus, and that's why Propus is the name of each of these panels, but you can always rename your targets. But panel 1, and all I'm doing is a slew in center, and I'm doing smart exposures of 30 seconds. I'm doing 10 of them, gain of 0, offset of 50, with the IR UV cut filter, and I'm dithering every 3 frames. All I'm trying to do here is I'd like to capture enough data and take a look at the panels and make sure that the composition that I'm achieving is what I want. And if not, I'll make some adjustments to the framing and reshoot. But once I know I've got what I want, then we go into production data gathering. And I'm actually, since it says that we're going to have several hours of clear skies, I'm going to go ahead right now and I'm going to bump this up. Instead of shooting 10 frames, I'm going to go for 20 frames, 30 seconds each. And that means that I'm shooting 10 minutes of data for each panel in the IR UV cut or the luminance data. So and if we like the composition, we can use this data. So I'm going to go with 20 instead of 10 because I think it'll stack a little bit nicer, and especially since there's a lot of HA region in here, and unfortunately, I'm not shooting a hydrogen alpha yet. I don't want to shoot any of the narrow band. Those are longer exposures. Those are going to be 2-minute exposures. I don't want to shoot any narrow band until I have really good data and confirmation of the composition using the luminance frames, the IR UV cut. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bump all of this up to 20 frames, and that should bring in some detail that normally would only come through in the hydrogen alpha. So, all right, with that, let's get this done. So I hope that the gods have not lied to us about clear skies tonight. If they have, well, you live and you learn. Either way, I am definitely ready to go here. So stay tuned, folks. We'll see if we get some data. Okay, so I got some data. Not that evening. Regrettably, that turned out to be a lost evening. With the clouds just simply didn't clear, so the gods were not cooperating with us. But I did follow up, and luckily I had really good seeing from February 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. So I had 5 evenings in a row of really good seeing, which is super unusual, but I was really happy to have it. And in fact, I followed the strategy that was discussed. I wanted to get first a composition, and I actually shot some luminance data and a little bit of HA. And I'm glad I did, because it is a hot mess. And I think anybody who's ever done a mosaic knows exactly what happened here. I had thought that I properly set the rotation angle of my camera in a prior session, but it turns out I didn't do that. And when that happens, the mosaic, the panels only align, I try to align, but they can only align kind of at the corners. So we get this really kind of interesting stitch with a number of gaps and obviously, poor orientation. So this is why I always shoot luminance just to double check the composition. So this was a hot mess, but it's very easy to solve. So the proper, and if you don't know how to determine the rotation angle, if you don't have a rotator, which I don't have, there is an easy way in N.I.N.A for you to make sure that you're framing with the proper camera rotation. And the way to do it would be to slew and center to an image. It could be anything. It could be IC 443. It could be M35. Whatever. If it's an object that you can locate in your atlas and slew to, and it's part of your mosaic, go ahead and do that. And then there's this button, determine rotation from camera. And what it will do is, based on the image, it'll plate solve and it will determine what the rotation of your camera is. It'll set that value. And with that value set, you can then set the number of panels you want and get yourself a nice composition. And that's exactly what I did. And so, speaking of the data, if we take a quick peek, you'll see that I reran. Oh, pardon me, I'm on the observatory machine. I reran the luminance data as well and double-checked my composition. And I did that underneath a separate directory, which we'll go to now, which is the IC443. We'll take a look at panel 1. And you'll see that I was very fortunate in that I got 4 days, 4 sessions, and each session that I shot that mosaic, that panel composition, I gathered, I believe I gathered 10 frames of IR data. There's 12 here apparently, but I think I shot 10 as my target, and then 15 frames of some narrowband. And so I did that for the 4th, the 5th. Double check. We should have 10 frames of, and we do 10 frames of IR UV, and then we have 15 frames of HA. So I did 2 days of HA, and then I did some O3. And again, 10 frames of IR and 15 frames of a narrow band. And then finally, I decided to grab 15 frames of sulfur. So with that, that means that for each panel in the mosaic, I have 30 IR UV or luminance frames, and I have 30 hydrogen frames, and then I have 15 sulfur and 15 O3 frames. Not a lot of data. This is not a lot of data, but it's enough to start. And the luminance data is what I use to put together a check of the composition, which we'll take a look at now. Okay, we're going to start with the fun part, which is the composition itself. And this is the mosaic that has been stitched together using literally 5 minutes of luminance data, so 10 frames. This is not a lot of data. And the process I followed, which I'm going to go through, we'll do hydrogen alpha together. But the process that I followed here was relatively straightforward. Stacking the frames, each panel, there are 9 panels, stacking them with Siril. And then, because I wanted a quick composition, I simply ran a histogram stretch in Siril, saved out each panel as a Tiff file, and then I used the Microsoft ICE utility to compose a panorama, a panoramic mosaic. And the end result is this very high resolution Tiff file. And in fact, this is probably 15,000 by 10,000 pixels. And for those, and guys, don't be judging. This is a composition test. This is to make sure that things are going to stitch together well and that we've captured what we want. And I think this is beautiful. M35, another dense cluster. I forgot the NGC number here. IC 443 supernova remnant. Prominent Gemini stars in Castor, and it looks really good even at the boundaries. I can see the boundaries. It looks really good. Now, here's the thing that's really amazing about mosaics, and I hope you all appreciate this, but the resolution that you're able to achieve. This is a huge file. Here we're starting to get into the supernova remnant. This is luminance data, okay? This is a very small stack, but it is fascinating how gorgeous this data is. This mosaic. Just capture it so you can see we'll talk about how I'm going to do a separate video on properly processing the mosaic, but right now this is about composition. And even with this star that kind of crossed the boundary, it seemed to be okay. And you can see wisps of nebula. This is molecular gas that's been excited by the supernova blast. I think it was 30,000 years ago that it happened. And incredible. Let's take a look over at the star. This is an open cluster as well. But let's this is a near field open cluster. Let's take a look at our really super dense. Where did we go? Hold on. Oh, I'll get myself. There's M35. Let's pull into M35. Look how gorgeous. This is just gorgeous. This is going to be a gorgeous photo. And then let's move up to look at this one. Oh my God. I have to tell you, I am very impressed with the Astrotech 115 EDT. This is a fine performing telescope. Probably one of the best investments I've made in my rig arsenal. Look at the size of this, guys. This is a beautiful, beautiful composition. This is all going to fill out. We're going to do hydrogen alpha together. I'm going to show you the process of doing a very quick composition, and we'll do this with hydrogen alpha. But I'm going to take this phone call first. Okay, so let's go ahead and process hydrogen alpha. So set your home directory, and I'm processing everything in the IC443 Mosaic workspace that I've created. And what we'll do is we'll start by creating a stack. So we'll grab our raw data for each. We have to do 9 panels. So we'll start with panel number 1. And remember, we shot 4 days, but let's start with the 4th. And let's grab our hydrogen alpha data. And let's add this to our files for conversion. Now let's go to the 5th. I believe I shot hydrogen alpha on the 5th. Pardon me, raw data. And we'll do one panel together, and then I'll speed through the other panels. So here's our second day of hydrogen alpha. And so that's all we're going to have here is roughly 30 files. And what I'm going to do is I'll convert this into panel 1 underscore HA. That's the name of the sequence that we'll start with. We'll convert, and our data is converted. Might as well throw an auto stretch on so we can take a look at what we've got. Ooh, we've got hydrogen alpha data. Look at that. And yeah, so we have halos for our bright stars. It's really a function probably of my filters. I'm using relatively inexpensive filters, the ZWO narrowband filter set. Someday I'll invest in more higher quality filters, but honestly, it doesn't really detract from the enjoyment that I get out of this work. So let's calibrate these files, and so we're going to need to grab our darks. We'll go to the calibration library for this rig. This is the AT115 EDT with the 2600mm Pro, and I shot all my narrowband at gain of 100, offset of 50, And these are 2 minute. This is a 2 minute. These frames are exposed for 2 minutes, so we'll grab the 120-second exposure. Having a really good, organized calibration library makes life so much easier. Let's go grab the flats. Flats. Remember, we take flats for each of our filters. For our rig and camera combination. So let's go to our calibration library. Again, AT115 EDT, gain 100, offset 50. And let's go to our flats and we'll grab the master for our hydrogen alpha. So now we have our hydrogen alpha, and we'll go ahead and let's calibrate these files. And give it a second. It's actually pretty quick. This machine has a GPU on it. I think Siril takes advantage of that. Okay, so now our files are calibrated. It looks a little bit, we have a little bit of noise here, but look, calibrated frames even look better. Still amazing to me. We're going to really like this mosaic. It's going to be beautiful. And let's go ahead and register. We'll use global star alignment. We have plenty of stars here to choose from. And this should get everything, all these exposures aligned. Okay, so with all of the subs aligned, we can see a little bit of little rotation that took place here. Looks good though. We can now go ahead and do some stacks. So why don't we stack this into our stacks folder, and this will be panel 1 underscore HA. And we'll start stacking. Okay, we've got our stack of panel 1, and boy, does this look good. I really love this. It's not a lot of data, and we are generating some very pretty nebulosity in here. This hydrogen alpha data is just awesome. This is one panel. We have 9 panels, so 8 more to go. I'm going to go ahead and process that, and once I get us to 9 HA panels, I'll take us to the next step. Okay, so with that, we now have our stacked panels, and we'll see them here in the stacks folder. So we'll see panel 1, 2, 3, all with the HA suffix on it. That was the naming convention that we used. So the next step that we will follow is to create Tiff files out of the stacked images, and I'm going to do that in Siril as well. I decided to do this. There's a lot of different ways that you can create these quick compositions, but I decided to do it with all free software. So I'm going to leverage Siril, which is free, and I'm going to leverage the Microsoft ICE tool as well. Okay, so let's add the stacked panels to our convert tab, and we want the HA panels, and here they are, 1 through 9. Perfect. And we're going to convert this, and let's just call these my stacked panels, and we'll do a convert. And all this is doing is giving us a sequence to work with, and I've set the view to linear, so we really can't see anything. But if I go ahead and open up the sequence list, we can open up the frame list, and we have my stacked panels 1 through 9, and let's go ahead and take that first panel, make sure that it is selected, and it is, and go to image processing, histogram transformation, apply an auto stretch, and voila, our first bit of data. So let's apply that, and we'll go ahead and we'll save this to a location that I've called Tiffs. And I did this for the luminance data. So let's go ahead and let's call this panel, forgive me, panel 1. And instead of it being panel 1 underscore HA, and then we'll make this a .tiff. This will generate a TIFF file for us, okay? So if we hit save, it'll ask us for some details. 32-bit would be fine, no compression, and embed ICC profile. Okay, so we are now going to do this for each of these, okay? Note that it is unstretched. Go to histogram transformation, auto stretch, apply, close, and just save it. And we'll do this one again in TIFFs, and this is going to be panel 2. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this for all the panels. Okay, at this point our work in Siril is done, and note I did no background extraction, I did no linear fitting of data, none of the stuff that will be done later when we actually get to creating a high quality, high res image. Right now I'm just demonstrating how I quickly check composition, and I use the HA data. I usually just do this with luminance, as you saw, but I wanted to walk you all through the process. And so the next step right now is we're going to leave Siril, and we're actually going to we're going to launch the Microsoft ICE product, and this is It's the image composite editor, and it's no longer supported by Microsoft. It was built by I guess one of their research groups, but it is still possible to get your hands on it. And if you Google MS ICE, you'll let's bring that up. If you just Google the expression MS ICE, that's what I did at least, and there's a entry in the Microsoft website on their Microsoft research page that discusses it a bit. But Tony and Kelsey Northrup, this is where I downloaded it from. They actually maintain a link to it. So this is one way of doing it, and while this is still available, I recommend it. It's quick and it's easy and it works. So let's create a new panorama, and what we're going to do is we're going to grab the data from our workspace. Let's find it. Hold on. We're going to go to our stacks, to our TIFFs, and let's grab our HA panels. Okay, let's open them. And there are our panels, 1 through 9. And we're going to go ahead and go to the stitch. And it's going to align the images. And then it's going to compose what it thinks to be the mosaic. And we'll see how close it is. Not close at all. So, fascinating. Really fascinating. Okay, so I was given a choice here. I could have edited that out from the video, but I decided not to, because when you stitch together panels in a mosaic, especially when you're doing many panels, in this case we're doing nine panels, it's not uncommon for the stitching software not to work perfectly. In fact, you don't see a lot of videos out on YouTube of people doing more than 2 or perhaps 4 panels. because of this very issue. There are other issues that we're going to see in the next video that deal with balancing signal intensities, etc. All these are challenges of mosaics, but the very first challenge, of course, is getting the stitch correct. Another reason why you focus on composition first. Right now I'm showing, I'm going to show you how we got here in a second. First of all, do not panic when you're doing mosaics. This is normal. There's lots of things that you're going to encounter that you need to address, and alignment is the very first thing. So the technique that the Microsoft Image Composite Editor uses is nowhere near as sophisticated as, or specialized, I should say, as the techniques that you'll use in astrophotography software, which often rely on star alignments and or photometric data, plate solving, all sorts of techniques that are designed specifically for astrophotography, where Microsoft ICE is a more general purpose, and I think it's using algorithms that are designed for all sorts of images and panoramas. So what do you do when you get that kind of a mess? Well, the easiest thing to do is reduce the number of panels that you're trying to stitch together at once. We know we have 9 panels here, so that means we have 3 rows and 3 columns. So the approach that I took to get to this final hydrogen alpha mosaic, which by the way I think is phenomenal, and we're gonna look at this in a moment, is to import. And we'll do this. Let's go ahead and let's create one row at a time. Okay. So I've already got my final image. I'm happy with. We'll look at that. But let me show you how we construct a row. Okay. New panorama. And instead of adding all, let's just add panel 1, panel 2, and panel 3. By the way, you may need to go down to 2 panels at a time when you're stitching, whatever's going to get you the best results. But I found that this worked really well when I did it by rows. So here we go. We have panel 1, 2, 3 in HA. Okay, so let's go ahead and stitch that together. Again, it'll run its aligning algorithm and it'll compose what it thinks to be. And voila, we have a really nice row 1. So you can go ahead then and export this, and exporting is you can crop it. Excuse me. We could always crop it and export it, but I'm going to do that at the end after we assemble all the rows. So you export it to disk. I've already done this. I export to a stitched directory, and I export it to row 1. So why don't we just call this row 1 new. Okay, save. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that for, actually, let me just redo that. Make sure I export this as, instead of a JPEG, I'd like to export this as a, well, too late. I would have liked to have exported this as a TIFF image. Let's do it. So TIFF, export to disk. TIFF tends to maintain a better resolution. Panel N1 HA stitch is not what we want. We want this to be row 1 HA stitch, and we'll make this new, and it's a TIFF file. So let's save that out. Takes a moment, and then we're going to go back and we're going to do row 2 and row 3, and then we're going to stitch row 1, row 2, and row 3 together. All right? It's a relatively simple process. All right? Relatively simple process. Probably the trickiest part of it is to make sure that your panels are are numbered in a way that you have the correct panels for any given row. HA 4, 5, and 6. This would be our second row. Let's import this. Go to stitch. By the way, there are choices here for how you might rotate an image. Algorithm use. Ooh, I really like this. Love this. Okay, so let's go ahead to the export and get row 2 out the door. TIFF image. export to disk. Look at that beautiful supernova remnant. Just a little bit of data. It's crazy. Let's go to stitched. Let's choose row number 2. And let's save that out. And we'll do our final row and then our final stitch of all 3 rows into one mosaic, and then we'll do a crop. Okay? And remember, all we're doing here is getting a composition. That's what we want, a composition. We want to confirm that that we're going to invest nights and nights and nights of data collection here. Let's make sure that we are going to have a resulting composition that we're happy with. Actually, we don't want 6. We want panel 7, panel 8, and panel 9 in the HA channel. We've got it. Let's stitch it. Okay, very good. M35. And let's go to export this. And to a Tiff, export to disk. We'll call this row 3. Very good. Save that out. Okay, now we've reduced the dimensions of the problem for the software, right? So now it's dealing with 3 panels as opposed to dealing with 9 panels. Okay, so row N1 and 2 and N3 are the panels that we'd like to stitch together. Let's go to stitch. These are bigger panels, so it takes a little bit more time, but it feels it's gotten a proper alignment. And so I'm going to compose the image, and let's take a look. Oh, look at that, guys. We have a fully composed hydrogen alpha composition. I'm going to go ahead and crop this one, even though I've already saved this, but let's crop it. Let me show you how easy it is to crop. I'm just going to get rid of these edges here. And I'm going to get rid of these edges down here. And I'm going to get rid of the edges on the left and the edges on the right. But that's pretty tight, right, when you think about it. And yeah, sure, we have an intensity gradient here we need to deal with, but frankly, the rest of it looks really very good. So let's go ahead and export this to disk. And this will be panel, this is not going to be any of those. We're going to make this our IC443 HA mosaic. Okay, this is just a composition, but let's take a look at it. Okay, so refresh, let's go to stitched, and let's look for what we just built here. Refresh. Here it is. Okay, so this is our mosaic. We're going to open it. I'll open it up with photos. And it's a big file, so give it a moment. And I already have, I think I already have the luminance data open. So now let's take a, oh no, it may have been the hydrogen alpha. Look at that. And we'll go to full screen. And again, let's take a look at, this is hydrogen alpha, so the stars are this is very different than the luminance data, but we still have, it's a noise, don't worry, we've done zero processing on this. This is just raw data that's been, very little raw data actually. I think we have a total of 15 by 30. We have about an hour of hydrogen alpha data on each panel. And this is unprocessed, but look at the beauty here. This is the beauty of a mosaic, and we get the extended nebulosity, and this is the jellyfish nebula. Now you might also notice the orientation is different, but that's quite all right. This will be, I believe, that this will need to be, well, when we register and align these panels, when we get into actually producing the mosaic, we'll deal with the alignment, the registration of each channel against each other, and then we'll get into some of our processing. All this will line up. Well, that's it, folks. This is I think, a beautiful composition. It's absolutely amazing. It's for so many reasons, and we'll talk, I'll save all my discussion of the actual deep sky objects until the next video when we actually produce our full color mosaic. But I think that this is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm very, very pleased with the composition. Okay, folks, I'm going to call that a wrap on this video, and we covered a lot here. It was a long video. I appreciate you staying to the end, and we covered data acquisition in N.I.N.A, as well as a preliminary composition of a 9-panel mosaic. And I know it was a long one, and I appreciate you sticking it out to the end. And I hope you found it entertaining, and perhaps you even learned something. Now, we're going to do a follow-up video to this, which will be on the final composition of the mosaic and the final processing of the mosaic to create a beautiful color rendition based on all the narrowband data that I'm collecting. I do want to get a few more sessions in with these targets, so it may be a couple of weeks before that video comes out. However, I will be publishing other content in between. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead, subscribe. And I'm producing content usually once a week, and if you're into astronomy and all things astrophotography, I think you'll enjoy the channel. All right, with that, guys, I will see you all in the next video.